everybody, and welcome to the next edition of the Experienced Evolved webinar, soon to be a podcast. If you are listening to this on one of our podcasting platforms, then it is a podcast now. Anyway, let's go right ahead and get into it to today's subject. So today we're going to be talking about planning for your experience strategy. In 2026, 2027, whenever you're planning, this all fits within it. Or maybe if you haven't got to planning yet, this is going to give you some great ideas on how to be able to plan. Let's go ahead and get over to the slides now. So this is all about, and this isn't a football theme, so I'm not a football coach, but let me introduce myself here in just a second. So this is about your employee and customer experience game plan, or any human interactions that you have with people. Hello, I'm Samantha Elizabeth. I am a human experience consultant and coach. Like I said, not a football coach. I am a coach to leaders, employees, all sorts of people that need coaching. I have 25 years of designing employee and customer experiences. When I say customers, I mean clients, I mean patients, anybody that is a consumer of your business, of your service, of your product, your brand. And that is all human experience, as I call it. I am the creator of the Experienced Evolved framework, and this is a little bit about me. My word of the year is rooted in helping people to be able to create great strategies, rooted in myself, rooted in all the things that I do and that I do well. There's some other pictures of my dog, my cat, my kiddo too, and also that I love to support my friends. I have my cat joining right now, so let me go ahead and get her over here. You'll see these in my videos very often, and my cat is just very curious. I also love to sing. I love to dance. I love to play the guitar. Although, as you can see in that picture, I'm not very good at it, and that's okay. So let's talk about experience in general. Why does experience feel off? You often have frustrated employees that I had a company tell me one time that my employees just like to complain, and they're complaining for a reason. They're not complaining. They're trying to give you feedback. And we'll talk a little bit about feedback here in a little bit, but you can see in a lot of times that you have broken customer moments, things that go awry. And sometimes things just go awry because it does. Technology kind of breaks down sometimes, but there are ways to prevent it. And so let's talk about those rushed fixes. Of course, rush fixes are being reactionary to things, and you want to be proactive in things. So that's why it is really important to look at the experience overall. You also might have too many tools. There is tools on top of tools on top of tools. And this is creating a lot of friction. People are having to go from one system to the other system to the next system. Maybe your customers are doing the same thing, not only just employees too. And so you really want to have things streamlined as much as possible. You also might have too much going on. Employees oftentimes, and this is something that I see, so they just don't have time for their things that they need to do as an employee to be engaged in the company and also do their work on top of it. So oftentimes when you're overloading with too much stuff, too much engagement, too many things that they need to do above and beyond the rules of their job, that is something that's really hard for them to comprehend. And same thing with customers too. If they're bombarded with so many things that you have going on, or even partners that you're working with, or even vendors as well too. So this is something that's really going to be things to streamline, and thinking about it as a holistic approach to the experience that all of those humans that interact with your company have. So the cost of reacting. Of course, reaction is exhausting. If you can imagine a boat that has a lot of holes in it, and of course your short-term fixes are just putting a plug in the hole. And sometimes that plug comes out and you get more water and your boat starts sinking. If you're not going to fix the boat and rather than just put band-aids, if you will, on different things, then that's going to be a problem. And you're constantly reacting, you're constantly going in all of these different directions. That creates long-term frustration. And then it's very frustrating for your customers, your employees, or anybody that's interacting with your business. Of course, there's burnout cycles. You see burnout in employees. You see customers leaving because they just want to deal with it anymore. And those are the kind of things that really hurt your business is that whole retention that leaves, because you are creating bad experiences. And of course, no clear direction. And that's why strategy is a huge thing. And I'm going to introduce you to the strategy. So before we get there, though, you keep hearing me say employees, clients, customers, all of it, and they're all related. I'm going to tell you why. If you have a bad employee experience, and I'm talking about all of the maybe the toxicity in your culture, maybe the bad processes for employees that are just very cumbersome and arduous tasks for people. And then maybe you have the technology that is just so behind and not doing anybody any justice. Of course, these internal frictions are going to cause outwards to customers, and customers are really going to feel it. And employees, they do want to do a good job, but they're often frustrated by things that are happening within the company. And maybe it's all of those initiatives that you have for them, and you're not really streamlining things. And then, of course, customers put pressure in on employees too. So if a customer is really frustrated or, they're trying to get something done with your particular company and an employee can't help them, this is creating a lot of push and pull. And that's why it's kind of like tug of war. It's the back and forth there. And of course, that swings both ways. And if you're having problems with your vendors, maybe there's a supply chain issue of some sort, or maybe you're having it with the partners, people that are partnering with your company. Those are all things that affect employees and customers and everybody that's interacting with your business. So that's why we say one field, one game. And I get a lot of nods and agreements when I say this. Employee experience and customer experience are not two different things. They are the same strategy. That's why we're going to talk about experience in one strategy. So when we talk about experience in one strategy, this is something that we're going to say we need to improve employee experience and we need to improve customer or client or whoever your consumer of your product. We need to improve those things together. And so you can call it almost like a 360 plan of something, because if you oftentimes improve employee experience, and I'm not talking about giving them yoga sessions and pizza parties and all of that kind of stuff to keep them engaged. I'm talking about improving their experience as an employee. It often improves the customer or client experience. But I see all too often that at the top C level or a high level within a company, customer experience or a CXO, a chief experience officer, focuses only on customers and they don't focus on employee experience at the same time, but it's cyclical. It completely is. And so that's one thing that I really encourage companies to do. If you have employee experience in your HR programs or your HR department, you have a single person working on that and they're so far embedded into the organization, I really encourage you that if you do have a CXO, that they also take on employee experience. And here's why. Employee experience is not just an HR program. I know. Wait, hold on 1 second. No, they work with the employees. They engage them. They give them a great experience. Of course, they're an HR function, HR, human resources. But let me tell you this. Oftentimes, when you keep experience or employee experience within the HR program or HR department, you oftentimes get them to only focus on HR initiatives. They work on development. They work on culture. They work on different things that you would deem an HR function. However, there is a lack of confidence in HR right now. And it's because employees don't know if they can trust HR. And when you have your employee experience person in there, that's a problem. They can't trust the person that is trying to help them, to be happy and working with the company. So often when you put them in a strategy position, a position that can actually work with the leaders across the organization, and you can really help them and also help them to work across all the departments of the organization, because employee experience is not just an HR function. It's not DEI only. It's not communications only. It's a lot of different things. And in fact, employee experience needs to work with IT, technology. We'll talk a little bit about that. Employee experience needs to work with operations. It needs to work with leaders. It needs to work with the CEO of the company. And that is so important because we're talking about employees, including the CEO themselves. So I just want to encourage people that if you do have employee experience embedded within the HR organization, take it out of the HR organization, put it in the C-suite, put it in a leadership position above. I'm not talking about just for myself. I've seen companies that do this and it completely changes the experience for employees. So I completely encourage you to do that. All right, let's talk about silos. Of course, a lot of times we hear about siloing within a particular organization. And if you only work on CX, customer experience or client experience, whatever consumer of your product or brand, it strains those employees because they can see like, oh, we only care about our customers. We're going to give them a great experience. Oh, heck with our employees. We're going to give our customers a good experience. And employees are trying to give them a good experience, but there's problems within the organization. If you only fix employees, yeah, that relieves some pressure on customers. But then there's that other side of customers. So that's the reason why you need to integrate your experience planning, because it's related. So let's talk about why 2026, 2027, Q3, Q4, they need a game plan. Wherever you are in your journey, it's not just about making the plays. It's about the overall plan. So if you think about a football game, it's not just a single play that's going to win the game. It's an accumulation of things that you're doing. And you need to have a plan. And if we think about even before the game, you need to scout for talent. And you need to plan scouting, or also, really looking for the data and everything. We'll get into that. But in football terms, like I said, I'm not a football coach at all. But if you scout, if you plan, if you execute and you review, like reviewing the plays and becoming a lot better, that's really going to give you the design that you need. Let's talk about it in the Experience to Evolve framework, because great experiences are designed, not improvised. And you can see any game, any sport, any way that when teams, and I'm talking about in corporate or football or sports ball or anything like that, they're not improvised. They're actually planned and they're executed and they deliver. A lot of great teams do. So Experience to Evolve framework, you've heard me say this. This is not anything revolutionary. This is really just a typical plan that you can use in order to be able to design your experience. And this is all about discover. We'll talk a little bit more about these. Design, implement, and analyze. And you can see it's a repeatable approach because it's cyclical. You're going to discover, which is getting your data and all of the things that you need to do. You're going to design it. You're going to put it all together. Then you're going to actually implement it. And then you're going to analyze it and say, how did we do? And then you're going to go back to discover, because then you're going to have the data to be able to do more discovery, to dive further into it. And you can see every single time you do this, a repeatable approach, it gets better and better every time. So sticking to your plan, putting together your plan, sticking to your plan, improve, 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 improve. And sometimes pivot. Let's talk about foundation. So there are three things in an ecosystem. There's people, there's processes, and there's tools, and they're all related. They all go into experience. People's the most important though, because people use the processes, they use the tools or the technology, but this is so important for you to consider all of them, But start with people. I'm going to say start with people, because if you have people in mind, then you're going to design better processes. If you have people in mind, you're going to use the best technology for them as well too. A lot of times I see companies start with technology. They say, oh, we need a new HR system. Oh gosh, I'm going back to HR, but any sort of thing. Okay, we need a new sales system. Let's do something different here. We need a new sales system. So we're going to put together a great sales system. Oh, what's a great sales system? And let's just, pull one out and everything. Okay, now we're going to figure out the processes in order to use it. And okay, now we're going to figure out how people are going to use it. And then we're going to train the people. But if you consider the people and the roles and everything in mind, then you might be able to find the better tool for them rather than think about the technology, or maybe the coolest technology. Like, oh man, this is so cool. Look what it can do. But if you don't have people in mind first, that's going to be a problem. And that's going to be a bad experience, because we're talking about human experience. We're talking about people experience here of how to actually improve your company. So let's talk about the discover phase. This is the first phase of the Experience Evolve framework. This is about scouting the field. So you're going to look at the data, and this is gathering data, and this is gathering data several different ways. You want to look at your employee day-to-day reality. You want to look at all of your customer friction points. You want to look at your broken and unclear processes, and you want to have you want to look at the misalignment or overloaded tools. And you're going to gather all of this data through employees and customers. And you can see here, you can do surveys for employees, one-to-one meetings, or interviews with customers. You can have focus groups for both. You can have suggestion box. Yes, the good old-fashioned suggestion box within an office or somewhere on a SharePoint or Google Drive, however you want to collect it. You want to put in a suggestion box. You can make it anonymous if you want to. Some people don't like anonymous, and that's okay. It depends on what your culture is on here. But all of this is really to give the people the psychological safety to be able to raise their hand and say, there's a problem here. And for you to say, oh, no, you're not going to say that. What you're going to say is, yes, feedback is a gift. Please give me feedback. Because if we just have like a bunch of yes people around us and everybody's like, great, 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 we're never going to improve anything. And things are going to continue to break down, and things are going to still get exhausting for people. So you still want to gather that data and realize that every single bit that employees are not complaining, they're there to give you the feedback. And the scary part is when they become silent, when it's at that point, that's when you're going to see the terrible disengagement of employees and people leaving and people not caring. They're just not caring. So you want to do that. And I'm going to say something. Employees, when they exit, they have good feedback. And this is what you're really going to want to look at, is that feedback. They may be leaving because they got a higher paying job. Why couldn't you pay them more? They might have been leaving because they couldn't get the position within the company. That's okay. That happens. We got to realize that employees see companies as stepping stones. And when an employee exits, that's okay. Like, we can't assume that somebody's going to be with us forever. This is no longer the greatest generation of the boomer generation where there's a lot of loyalty, but there was also a lot of unfortunately toxic work environments, and people just knew that they had to take it. This is not that time. People don't need to take it anymore. They can move on, they can reskill, they can move on to another company, and companies got to realize that an employee comes to work for them. It's service that they're giving to the company. And so this is the reason why exit interviews are so important, for you to gather feedback from that employee. What worked for them? What did not work for them? And really taking that feedback and improving things. Then there's also stay interviews with employees. And this is also important too. This is, why are employees staying at the company? Maybe it is their paycheck. Congratulations, you pay them enough. Maybe it is other things, the people factor. Maybe it is the technology that they like to work with. There's so many different things, but this is for employees that are there. And this is not just a employee engagement survey. This is not just a pulse survey. This is for the employees that are doing well. And you want to know, what are we doing well and what can we keep doing well for them? So looking at the positive, there's so many different ways that you can do exit interviews and stay interviews. You can do like a live interview, you can do a survey. There's so many different ways, you can do that. And then for customers too, let's talk about this a little bit. So we already talked about surveys, interviews, focus groups. There's also social listening. That is, if you have a community manager out there that is looking at the reviews, let's talk a little bit about that too. But you're out there, you're hearing what people are saying about your company, or you're scouting on the internet, you're looking to see ways and how people are talking about you. Hopefully positively, right? But then there are some things that you're going to see that you might not like, and you might take a little personally, and that's okay. But just take it, once again, it's feedback. Feedback's a gift. I want to remark on reviews, though, real quick with customers. So review is this something that's like, oh, eek. All right. I'm going to say this, and this might be a little controversial. Don't ask people just to give you a Google review. I'm going to say this. Before they have a chance to give you feedback, don't ask them to go out to Google and air their grievances on your company. And I say this because I see this very often, that in people's lobbies, to their place of business, to customers. Oftentimes I'll get like something from a business, and it will say, give us feedback. And the first thing I click, and when I click on it, it goes right to Google reviews. It doesn't give me an opportunity to actually give feedback to the company if something went wrong, during the process. And I'm not a Karen. I'm not going to go and say, can I talk to your manager? But I really want people to understand or realize that the first thing you don't want to do is send people right to Google to give you a review. You're going to want to give them an opportunity to give you feedback and help you to understand what's wrong or what went well. Sorry, not to go to the right to the negative, but what went well, and make sure that you fix it or at least identify it before sending them out to Google. So this is what I recommend. I do recommend a short survey out to customers when they engage with you. And I recommend some great basic questions. If you want to know some great questions, contact me. But asking some basic questions to your customers. And then at the end of the survey, that's when you can say, if you enjoyed working with us, please feel free to review us on Google or Trustpilot or wherever they're going to do it. Or for employees, it's Glassdoor. You want to make it as positive as possible. And that's how with great experiences, that's how businesses get great Google reviews. But also, that is a way for somebody to be able to air their grievances to you and then be able to put on Google the positive things, hopefully, if you fix them. Also, community forums too. There are things, that let's just say Microsoft, out there, there's community out there. You can go and look at all of the issues that people are having. You're able to respond to them if you have a way to respond to them. But there's also ways for you to go out there and say, I'm having this particular issue. And of course, that is feedback from customers too. And then last but not least is support tickets. You get a support ticket in, this is going to tell you, hey, I have an issue. It might just be a learning opportunity for them to know a little bit more about the product. But then you think, in the onboarding or in the training or somewhere, we need to identify this and if it's a common problem. So those are all of the different ways. So this is data that you're going to get in, and you're going to be able to create all of the friction points that people are pointing out to you. So if gathering the data is totally skipped, you are only hitting the tip of the iceberg. If you're thinking, I'm just going to look at the data that I have available. I'm not going to ask anybody. I'm just going to ask maybe like a couple people or something like that. That's just the tip of the iceberg. It's not solving the wrong problem. It might be solving the one problem that some random person in the company have. It's very surfacey, very surface level improvements that you get. And it's not really it's not really getting to the root cause, the untouched cause. And so that's the reason why in the discovery phase, it's good to also ask follow-up questions to things too. If somebody says, I just don't like this system, you might go into the system and say, oh yeah, I can see why they don't like it. No, you really don't know why they don't like it. So you really want to get to the root cause. And that's the reason why, like, if people hear it before, it's the why. If you're asking that 5 times, but anyway, you ask why 5 times, and you really want to get to the root cause of things. So why is this? Why is this? Why is this? Not badgering them, like don't do that, but you really want to make sure that you get to the root cause of the issue so you can actually fix the root cause. So you're not just doing that reactionary, just fixing all the little holes and everything rather than just fixing the whole boat. All right, design. So this is something where it is so crucial within that you got all this data, okay? And now you're going to put it all together. And gosh, you could have a lot of data. Yay! You got so much to work with here. And this is going to be, if you know project management, the planning phase is really a big part of how you're going to actually improve things. And there's so many different ways to go about doing this. It depends on what's best for your company. But of course, the one thing you're going to want to do is define what is employee experience like supposed to be at your company. What's your culture? What are your values? What are your beliefs? What's your goal? What's your mission? All of that kind of stuff. What is employee experience supposed to look like? And then you want to map the key customer moments. What interactions do you have with customers? Is it face-to-face? Is it on the internet? Is it in meetings? Is it when they first enter your website? All of those key customer moments. And then you're going to want to clarify the roles and expectations within those and make sure you can hear it. There's RACES, which is, of course, responsible, accountable, consulted and informed. You can do that way. You're going to make sure that you are really defining the roles and that you're also looking at simplifying the workflows too. So if it goes to point A and then it goes to point B and then it goes back to point A and then it goes to point C and then it goes all of these different ways, is there any way that you can kind of unravel this tangled web and be able to fix things and simplify the workflow? And then also choose tools with purpose. And this is going back to that whole with people in mind kind of thing. Yes, some tools are really great, but they're really hard to work with. So those are the kind of things that you're going to really want to look at. And part of this is doing an employee and customer journey, and that is talking about how did somebody first hear about us in all of these different ways, and all of these different ways are great. How did somebody start to an employee thing, for the candidate experience? You're going to want to map the whole journey from beginning to end. And once again, it could be cyclical too, because people can come back, but this is something that you're going to want to map. You could do a roadmap too, a roadmap from point to point to point to point of what does that journey look like. You could also do a task analysis. So a task analysis is broken down, once again, people, processes, and tools. And you're going to want to look at what is the action and what is the input, what is the output, who's involved, what is the process for it, and what is the technology that is used in it, or if no technology at all, and that's okay. But then you're going to want to find out what is the friction within the task analysis. You can also do workflows too. Those good old-fashioned workflows that start here and it goes here and then it goes there and then all of that kind of stuff. You can do all sorts of things to be able to determine. But what you're really looking for is this is where the rub is. This is where the issues are. And that's in your design phase. Of course, in your design phase too, what you want to do is you want to align everybody on what are the top issues that you can solve. You don't have to solve everything at once. And in fact, you can't. And oh my gosh, I'm going to corporate terms here. the low hanging fruit? What are some quick wins that we can have in order to improve the experiences? What are the short term goals? What are the long term goals? All of those kind of things that you're really going to want to define to be able to quickly change the experience as quick as possible. But you got to realize that experience does not change overnight. People's minds don't change overnight. So that's something that you're really going to want to consider here, is that experience is not going to change in a year. It could improve in a year, but it's certainly not going to give you 100% engagement or 100% more clients within a year. It doesn't always happen that way. You can get lucky, especially if you're drastically changing things, but you're going to want to make sure that you have this alignment internally, that you are communicating to people what you're planning to do, making sure there's no objections. You have this shared understanding of what are the issues, what are we going to do, how are we going to solve it, how we're going to work together. Everybody needs to work together. And that is something that is very important. Of course, it creates consistency too. Everybody knows, hey, this is what we're changing. This is my role within that. They're not making it up themselves. They're really helping to the person in the experience chair, that they're helping people to understand their role in it, and that there's consistency within the company. So if you're rolling out training, everybody's kind of getting the same training, and then training per role, whatever you're looking for. There's fewer surprises, of course, with communication too. And then also, it's stronger execution. We're going to get to execution next. But before we go to execution next, I want to address something. That is, it's kind of frustrating. And that is this image right here. If anybody knows what this is West Side Story. West Side Story is based on Romeo and Juliet. Yes, the Shakespearean play or story. And this is that we have the sharks and the jets. I forget which one's which. Gosh, don't kill me. I'm sorry. It's been a while since I've seen this movie, but I reference it very often in corporate life. And the reason why is because if you watch the movie, it's incredibly frustrating because you see people are fighting, the sharks versus the jets, and they do their little snappy dance and they come at each other and everything, and they fight. And it's very frustrating because people die in the end, of course, because of their stupid feud. And I bring this up because this is corporate life too. And I'm not talking about corporations fighting each other. I'm talking about internal fights within corporations. And I saw this too often. Working for large companies, I see that sometimes IT absolutely hates operations or vice versa. And they're always feuding. And they're always like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's a silly fight. You work for the same company. You have the same mission and you have the same vision and you have the same goals. You might have like your piece of the goals and everything, but it shouldn't be a fight. And it's just so frustrating to see this within companies that, here comes one leader and here comes another leader and they're doing their fight dance thing all the time. And they're constantly trying to out each other and everything. They all work for the same company. We're all on the same team here, guys. So the Sharks and the Jets, they're in a city and they're all trying to make it in life, but yet they're feuding. And this happens all too often in corporations. So please, no more Sharks versus the Jets. Just, can we all get along? Can we all start working towards the same mission, the same vision, the same goals? We are the same company. Sure, there might be fights among other companies, company versus company and everything, because it's competition. But within one company, let's not do that, okay? So let's talk about implement. So you went discover, you got all your data, and then you went to design. Gosh, I'm not doing this in the right chart, but that's okay. You got design, and your design phase, of course, is where you're doing your journey mapping, all of that kind of stuff. You're getting all of your everybody together, and you're saying, okay, this is what we're doing, and they're like, all right, So now you're going to actually run plays. This is where people are really instrumental in running the plays. You're going to want to make sure you're executing well. This is very good change management. Of course, change management begins before they implement, but you want to make sure that you have great change management. And part of your great change, your excuse me, your great change management. Oh, try saying that 10 times fast. Is clear communication. You're going to want to make sure that all of the players are in the position that they're supposed to be in. You're going to want to make sure that leadership is modeling. And I have seen this as well, too. I have seen in corporations where leaders are like, yeah, well, we got to do this change and I don't really like it. And they're telling this to their team and their team just like, yeah, I don't like it either. And they model after their leader. So, yeah, I'm not talking about like, leaders coming in with toxic positivity as well too. You're going, everybody, this is going to be great and everybody's going to love it and all this kind of stuff. Be real, okay? But definitely do some leadership modeling where a leader is also making the change too, because I've also seen this too. I had a company one time working for, and they wanted to make a culture change. But the leadership team was like, well, I don't like the words that we chose on the culture and everything. And well, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to collaborate, and all that kind of stuff. Because once again, sharks versus the jets. But those are the kind of things that you see that there's leadership is not modeling the new behavior. It's not modeling the change that's happening. And of course, training and enablement, you really want to make sure that you have great training. You want to let them know what's changed and what's the new process. You're going to want to reinforce behaviors. And this is going to take time. People's behaviors don't change overnight. And that is going to be something that's I have been talking a lot about employees. So let's talk about clients or customers as well too. Obviously with clients and customers, clear communication. You're going to want to make sure that, leaders are when they're talking to people in the community, they're talking with their network, all of that kind of stuff. Ooh, they're posting on social media, all of that kind of stuff that you have as you're outward facing. Training and enablement, for customers as well too. What can you put on your app, your website, or anything like that? It helps people to understand the change that you just had that is going to improve their experience. And of course, reinforce behaviors. So if you have a change, let's just say you implement a new change and, instead of getting emails all the time, people need to go out to the website or something like that and do an action. You might want to then not keep sending emails at that time. You're going to want to do the change and reinforce the behaviors over and over again and help people to understand what the actual change is. Try not to give in to things. If a customer calls up and goes, well, I like it the way we did it before, you got to change behavior because it's going to be better for them. Because once again, what did you do? You thought people in mind first, not technology and not process. So why implementation failed? Whoa, here we are. People is the big thing here. So, of course, good plans fall apart when you have assumptions and not clarity. You assume that people are going to like this. You didn't ask them, so you didn't do a very good discover phase. You just said, hey, we're going to change this because we want to. Then you might have rushed the rollout. You might have not planned well enough to be able to do the implementation. I know this is so frustrating because sometimes you just want to go, oh, you have some feedback, let's change it, let's go. You don't even think about it. You don't even plan for it. You just do it, And so this the thing is that rushing rollouts too. So if something is not quite ready, and it's going to land wrong. It's going to land wrong with customers and employees. And we're talking about vendors and partners here too. Let's just not forget about that too. Once again, your tool first thinking. You're thinking about technology. You see this like cool new technology and you're like, oh, this is going to change everybody's lives. But you're not thinking about the people that actually need to be involved in it. So that is it. And then, of course, lack of reinforcement. I have seen it before, too. We make a big change within a process. And some people are like, well, I'm just going to go around the process. I'm just going to go straight around this other person or something like that. There's no lack of reinforcement. These things are in place because you gathered the feedback, you thought about it, and you implemented something. So that's one thing of lack of reinforcement. If that's not happening, it's once again changing human behavior. And, that is going to be something that is beneficial for them. And then going back to the why, people want to know why. You need to let them know. You can't be like your parents and say, because I said so. Like that is something that people want to know. They're there, to be able to help your company. Customers want to know why things are changing as well too. So great communications out to customers. You don't have to over explain and everything and say, well, we changed this because blah 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 blah. No, you're going to just say, based on your feedback, we're doing this for you. Get excited. Whatever your marketing strategy is. All right, so the last phase is analyze. Of course, in football terms, you're going to want to watch the game film. Honestly, I had to Google that because I was like, what is that game film? Because it popped up as like analyze, and I was like, what? Okay, so this is where you might be in, I guess this is a football coach within a room with his players, and you're looking at the plays and what behaviors people are doing. And of course, this is a very physical game. So somebody might have like put their foot back wrong, or, somebody started too late or something like that. And so you might want to point out those, particular things. So during this, of course, this is in football terms, the review, adjust, and improve. This is where you're getting your employee feedback. You're getting your customer signals. So you might have planned for something rolled out and you're getting crickets from customers. So maybe your marketing messaging's not right. Maybe the product's not right. Maybe it's something they really didn't want. There's so many different things that you might get as customer signals too. Maybe lots of feedback, maybe lots of terrible Google reviews all of a sudden. You never know. But then you're also going to start to see behavior patterns as well too. Are people trying to just do constant workarounds, with it? Then maybe your process is not great. Maybe you didn't have people in mind. And then also looking at process and tool performance. And that is, did you make things faster? Do you create that efficiency? Is your tool actually performing at the right level? So let's just say you implement a new website for customers and, well, you're seeing a lot of activity, but they're not taking the steps. So there's something wrong. There's a breakdown in the process. Or something else could be happening within that tool performance too. Maybe it's really slow. Maybe you need to do some things to your website to make it faster. I mean, there's so many different things that happen, but what you want to really do is you want to analyze based on your feedback, based on the plan you put together, and based on implementation. Did anything go wrong? What went well too? I mean, this is always like what you call a post-mortem after a project, is you look at what went well, what did not go well, and what can we do better in the future? How can we work better into the future? What do we want to start doing? What do we want to stop? What do you want to start to do? Stop. Or what do you want to do differently? So many different questions that you can ask during this time. Make sure you define those ahead of time though, so you can answer them. Like, don't come up with the questions and go, okay, well, how do we want to look at this? Kind of define that in the plan phase too, of like, how do you want to look at this? Because then you're going to kind of set yourself up. But then you also might discover too, we're going back to the discover phase again. Wow, this is cyclical. But you might want to go back to discovering, what is this actually data that you're actually getting here? These are all great questions, right? But that's analyze. That's watching the game film. All right. So your real win for after you do all of this is you look like you have supported your employees. They're no longer complainers anymore. First of all, stop calling your employees complainers if you're actually doing that. But you have supported employees. You have confident customers. They're confident in you. They're confident in working with you. They're confident in your brand too. You have processes that flow. And then, of course, tools that actually help people, not create more bureaucracy or red tape or anything like that within their lives. All right, let's talk about me for just a minute. Let's come back to me again. So I really want to talk because this is something that, of course, I've been doing for 25 years for corporate, for small companies of 6 employees. Oh, actually, I worked with a company of 3 employees, but then also companies of 350,000. And I say this because I mean, no matter how big the organization is, some of the same issues pop up again and again and again. They may be more complex in bigger companies, like I said, sharks versus the jets, but I help them to discover the experience gaps that they have. And so this is something that could take a day, a week, or something, to be able to look at all of the experiences, gather feedback, gather the data they have, maybe gather further things like within surveys, all of that kind of stuff we take a look at and be able to determine the experience gaps that people have. And then, of course, designing and going through. I personally love to do journey mapping and be able to put that together so I can actually do the little exclamation points of here's an issue, that you have within your experience to be able to map all of that feedback together. But that's something that's really good for you to look at too. And then implementing sustainable processes or implementing sustainably, implement with sustainability in mind, because that is going to be something that's very important too. You're not going to want to implement something that's going to be exhausting every time, like a new program. And you're like, oh my gosh, this takes months, weeks, whatever it is. You're going to want to implement something that you can repeat over and over and over again if you're repeating it over and over again. And then, of course, analyzing and evolving. Wow, experience evolved. You're continuously evolving and improving. And stopping what's not working, but keep doing what's doing right. And that's something that I really help companies with. In fact, here's a company where I'm doing a manager training to be able to help their management staff become better and become better for the company. So this is also things that I do too. I can do an experience audit for you. I can do just a journey mapping with the feedback that you already have and gathering further information. I can also do playbook designs to experience playbook design. So what does a great experience would look like for your company, and putting together a playbook of what leaders could do, what employees can do to be able to have a better experience. Oh gosh, I'm going back to employees again, but of course we can talk about customers too. And then leadership alignment and execution support. Those are all ways that we can work together too. I have gone into companies, a company's already chosen a technology and now they want to implement the technology. Awesome. I'm there. I'm there to be able to help support and execute that and be able to come back and say, we did well. So those are all ways that I do work with a lot of different companies, and I've worked with several different companies on that. So if you'd like to work with me, SamanthaElizabeth.com, or you can email me at SamanthaElizabeth.com. Those are all ways that you can get a hold of me to be able to work with me. All right, final whistle. So just as a reminder, don't react, plan. So you want to discover, you want to scout the field, you want to design, you want to build the playbook, you want to implement, you want to run the plays, and then analyze, review the film. Because if you remember this, great experiences don't happen by accident. They're planned, not a reactionary type of thing. All right, this is a recording, obviously, but I would love to talk with you. SamanthaElizabeth.com, really simple. Reach out to me there. You can go to my contact page on there. You can email me, Samantha@SamanthaElizabeth.com. There's so many different ways to get a hold of me. And in fact, leave a comment. Do you have any questions? Do you have any reflections from this training? Or do you have any real world scenarios that you would love to talk about? Or even bring up, of experiences that you've improved? I'd love to hear from you, because this is how we all help each other. Hey, I realize that this is not the Sharks versus the Jets. I don't look at you at the Jets or the Sharks or anything like that. I certainly look at how can we help each other, because I believe that the success of life, that we create money We create opportunity. We create so much. I really feel like it's infinite. And it's not finite, it's infinite. And if we all help each other out, we can all have better lives here. Oh my gosh, I want to give you a great experience. Do you want to give me a great experience? Let's do that together. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Once again, SamanthaElizabeth.com. Samantha at SamanthaElizabeth.com is how you email me. There's so many different ways to get a hold of me or connect with me on LinkedIn, whatever. I would love to be able to continue this conversation and really help you improve your experiences too. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for watching the webinar today. Experienced Evolved is for leaders and other people who care about employee, client, partner, vendors, and beyond experience. We have a framework, a newsletter, webinars, videos, and a podcast coming soon, and other helpful content. If you missed any of our previous content, you go to SamanthaElizabeth.com and look for Experienced Evolved.